Okay, let's dive into this. Welcome to today's Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating dynamic, the symbiosis of corruption and silence. It is so incredibly easy to just look at a broken system and solely blame the people at the top, right? But to truly understand how bad systems survive and even thrive, we have to look at the entire ecosystem. Which brings us to the big question. Is it our fault or theirs? It's a super provocative question. Whenever leadership fails or acts unethically, our immediate reflex is to point the finger and just blame them. But we really need to pause here and examine the whole picture impartially. Because this isn't just some top-down thing being imposed on everyone. It's actually a complex, two-way street. Section 1. A toxic partnership. To wrap our heads around this dynamic, picture a toxic romantic relationship. You know the exact kind I'm talking about, where two people have habits that just bring out the absolute worst in each other. But they stay together anyway, trapped in this endless cycle of bad behavior and enabling. One person pushes the boundaries, the other ignores the red flags, and the cycle just keeps going. Well, take that interpersonal dynamic and scale it all the way up to the level of an entire society. That is exactly the framework our source material uses to describe the relationship between corrupt authorities and the general public. It's not just a one-sided oppression, where the public is entirely helpless. It's a codependent partnership. The text puts it perfectly, saying, so they become classic toxic partners and build their empire together. Think about what that literally means for a second. Leaders who abuse their power and a public that tolerates it are basically stuck together, enabling each other's worst habits. Because, frankly, those leaders cannot build an empire of corruption in a vacuum. They push the boundaries of what's acceptable, and the public, simply by not pushing back, effectively provides the foundational soil for that empire to grow. The leaders just wouldn't be able to maintain their grip without the highly tolerant environment that the public provides. Section 2. Supply and permission. Let's move to and see how this builds into the actual mechanics of the transaction, because the text doesn't just call it a toxic partnership and leave it there. It actually maps out precisely what each side brings to the table to keep this vast empire of corruption running smoothly. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that it's practically an economic transaction. On one side, you have the supply. Leaders are actively bending the rules, doing the wrong thing, and abusing their positions. And on the flip side, you have the permission. The public supplying silence and just looking away. The source makes a really impartial yet profound point right here. Yes, the leaders are absolutely guilty of committing the corrupt acts, no question. But the transaction absolutely requires both elements to function. It needs that supply of bad behavior, and it needs the permission from the masses to just let it happen. Silence acts like a green light. And wow, this completely shifts how we usually think about doing nothing. Public silence is not a neutral stance. It's not just a passive void or an absence of action. It's an active signal to proceed. When we look away, we are basically flashing a bright green light that tells corrupt leaders to keep going, to push even further, and to continue business as usual without any fear of consequences. Section 3. The human dilemma. And this brilliantly illustrates why this issue is so incredibly difficult to actually solve. Because it begs the really obvious question, right? If we know our silence is the green light allowing bad things to happen, well, why don't everyday, well-meaning people just speak up? It's because we face the ultimate human dilemma. It's this inescapable trap where everyone wants an honest society, but we actively avoid risking our own personal comfort to fix it. And this is where the source material gets deeply empathetic to the human condition. It completely validates that underlying frustration we all carry around. I mean, we all want to live in a fair, honest, uncorrupt world, but standing up to fix a broken system, that requires immense personal risk. It threatens our immediate stability today, while the benefit of an honest society feels, abstract and far off in the future. The text points out 3 deeply human reasons we fall into this trap. Number 1, we're busy. Everyday survival takes massive bandwidth, just managing work, families, and responsibilities. Number 2, we're tired. Fighting systemic corruption feels practically impossible when you barely have the mental energy to figure out what to cook for dinner. And number 3, we are afraid. Standing up to established power carries real, tangible risks to our livelihoods, our reputations, or even our physical safety. Actually, scratch the idea that these are just excuses. These aren't flimsy excuses at all. They are the heavy, practical realities of everyday life. So the crucial point is this brutal, inescapable truth. Doing nothing is easy, but it keeps the bad system alive. Our entirely understandable desire for personal ease to just get through the day without rocking the boat is the literal fuel that sustains the corrupt ecosystem. The system relies on our exhaustion. It essentially banks on the fact that we're going to be too busy, too tired, or too afraid to hit the brakes and turn that green light red. Which leaves us with this final lingering thought. Is your silence the green light? Based on everything we've unpacked today in this explainer, it is a question that demands some really deep self-reflection. It challenges every single one of us to ask if our totally understandable desire for comfort is inadvertently supplying the permission that toxic systems need to thrive. Are we part of the toxic partnership? Definitely think about that as you go about your week. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep seeking to understand the systems around you, and I'll catch you next time.